I couldn't do the session the other day. I was hoping to get this in before you actually really started digging very much, because obviously you're probably finding a lot of pottery and you might not have any idea of what it necessarily is. So the idea behind this session is to give you a bit of a feel for the sorts of things that you're finding, maybe give you a chance of identifying some stuff, and kind of acknowledging its significance, you know, what dates it is, the sorts of natures of the ceramics that we find and what they can tell us about life in Roman Airchester. Just so that you know, when you're finding things, you're not just kind of going, oh, it's another bit of pot put in the tray. You know, make your experience a little bit more enriched. So what I've done is I've got some of the really nice finds of pottery out of the Ark. Has everybody been for a tour around the Ark? No, you've not. Okay.
Ben is going to set one up for you before we go into the week, probably tomorrow morning. Okay, so that's so good. So if you're here for only this week, feel free to do it this week. If you're here for 2 weeks, probably go next week. Yeah, cool.
So when you do get to go for a tour around the Ark, you'll see a lot more stuff, and you'll see there's masses and masses of boxes of stuff that a lot of which contains beautiful finds like these. So the things that you'll be finding, typically speaking, well, what are they like? Can anybody give me some information about the sorts of things that they've been finding so far? Lots of grey. Right, yes, excellent. Right, so lots of Roman grey ware by the sound of it, so we'll get into that a little bit.
Oxford ware.
You got a bit of Oxford ware yesterday, yeah, that was a very nice piece. Yeah, thank you for showing that to me, that's awesome.
No, not Samian.
Yeah, Samian ware, yeah, absolutely. So we've got some really nice bits of Samian for you to have a proper look at. Anything else?
Not like that, to be honest.
Yeah, you'll get some. So you're whereabouts in the site are you?
Just a bit like to the right of, you know, where the wells have been dug.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
to the right of that.
Okay, cool.
Area.
Right, so you get a nice bit of early stuff there.
Underneath our side road, there's a sort of shallow ditch. You're getting some really nice. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So that's really cool. So you guys are getting out to the really early stuff, so that's nice. Broadly speaking, we've got a continuum from early round to late here, very roughly speaking. So that will hopefully orient you a little bit. So if you're clustering in that part of the display and interested in things that you find in there, you're probably in the later parts and vice versa. So yeah, it sounds like you're getting quite a variety of stuff. So hopefully this session will be helpful for you to kind of recognise some of the bits and to yeah, figure out their significance a bit more. So for those of you who are in the cemetery area and who are digging the features that's just underneath the actual cemetery itself, you're probably getting a lot of these. So you're going to be getting a lot of what we call Elsa swirling ware, which is this sort of really nice. It's actually the first wheel-made type of ceramic that we get in Britain, and you can see that they used the wheel to create some really nice kind of elegant patterning. So these what we call the cordons, these horizontal bands, which you find on a lot of the pots to this day. So if you find a body sherd that is featured a sherd without any, can you guys see by the way? Do you want to? Yeah, you're all right.
Yeah, do feel free to come out. Or
Yeah,
come
kind of.
inside here, a couple of you if you want.
Yeah, don't feel the need to kind of stay away.
Because remember, chronologically, you guys are in the Anglo-Saxon period. They move round, yeah. That's
So-
it. Sorry, yeah. Because certainly some of you guys definitely have found some nice examples of what with exactly this,
Yeah.
these cordons on. Remember, we were talking to you about how that's a distinctive characteristic
Yeah,
for this
exactly.
early pottery.
Yeah, so if you find any of the bits of the cordons on, you're in that early territory. So this stuff it starts about in the 1st century BC, but we're probably getting stuff that dates to immediately after the Roman conquest, potentially a little before, we don't know yet. So that's some really nice pottery. I think it's quite sort of elegant in its simplicity, right? You're looking for things like the mottled colours. You can see a lot of them have got they're not consistent colours like a grey or a black or anything like that. And it's the same with the shelly ware. So this is a really nice and complete example, well, semi-complete, it's been reconstructed, example of a shelly ware jar. And the bit that you're looking for here is the little flecks of white shell. Can you guys see that? It's quite, have a look up close if you want to. If you can't see it from where you are now, we will get a chance to kind of move around a little bit so you can come and have a look.
People want chairs.
What's that?
People want chairs because you grab these chairs.
Oh yeah, if you're
If anybody wants to, yeah.
grab a chair, yeah.
We're leaving now for any.
Well, I did kind of think you might want to stretch your legs. Yeah. So these two are going to be your early stuff. So they're going to be probably 1st century, although the shelly wares go right the way through the Roman period. If you're a pottery specialist, shelly ware body sherd can often be really, really annoying because you get shelly wares right the way through from the Iron Age all the way through into the medieval period. And without rim sherds and things that are diagnostic, you're going to probably struggle. But most of what you're getting will probably be Roman and Dane. We've already mentioned grey wares. Thank you very much for that. So these are some of the nicer examples of grey wares that you'll find. Most of the time people don't get excited about grey wares because it's kind of grey and it's a little bit dull. We don't know where a lot of it came from, so you can't really say too much about it, but you get some really nice examples of this stuff. This one, if anybody wants to come and kind of have a touch of it, you're allowed to touch it. Can you feel it? What sort of texture have we got? Quite rough, yeah, quite, yeah, almost like a fine sandpaper, right? Sort of finely grit sandpaper. So that's going to be your local greyware. It's called Upper Nen Valley greyware. It was mostly made in the area just upriver on the Nen, and it was made between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD. So you've got that stuff there, which is going to be nice and diagnostic of your definite kind of proper Roman. We're getting into the Roman period here. And then you've got things like these, which are made at similar sites, also upriver. This is a coarse, what we call grog tempered ware. And this stuff is quite, again, it's quite rough. You can see it's all a bit uneven. So you might be getting little body sherds of things that kind of feel a bit, you know, they've got dimples in them, maybe finger marks, probably quite coarse inclusions as well. That's the additives that have been put into the clay. And that stuff is also going to be 1st and 2nd centuries AD. And you'll probably often find these rims as well. These are called lid-seated rims or channel rims. They just kind of stick out a little bit and they've got that little kind of dink in them that allows the lids to sit on top of them.
Can't remember who you were talking to earlier, but you remember a couple of you found them on site this morning. We were chatting about them only shortly before lunch. So again, from one of these earlier ditches. Yeah.
So people are already finding this stuff, so that's cool. So hopefully you'll be able to put a little bit out of context now. You do find these, you can see that the rims are very similar to those from the shelly wares. So it pays to pay attention to what is in the clay itself. And in that respect, the fines washers, your friendly neighbourhood fines washers, are your best friends. Because trying to identify inclusions on a dirty piece of pot, really difficult. Don't do the old trick of licking it. Please don't do that. It doesn't work, and it just gets a nasty taste in your mouth. So don't worry about it. Your fines washers are there for a reason. Take your fines there. So those are your kind of early Roman sort of coarser wares. We got any questions so far? Do we want to?
I know, like, is the grog there like made of like smashed up pot, right?
Yeah, so most of the time, yes, it is. Sometimes you can see that it's actually got a surface on it from where it's kind of broken off the shirt. So yeah, it's kind of an early form of recycling. One of the things that you get in some Roman kilns is that you get failed loads of pottery and things explode and sort of shatter and stuff like that. And so one of the ways that they would have coped with all that waste is to crush the stuff back up and use it as stamping. So it's an early form of recycling. Any other questions before we move on?
There's a really nice piece of that grog tempered ware that conveniently had been sectioned by someone digging into two pieces. This morning, again, it showed really, really nice examples of the grog tempering and stuff. So you're definitely getting material as well.
Yeah, nice. So that's our kind of 1st and 2nd century, more or less covered for sort of 90-95% of the things you're going to find. Now, also in that period, you get some completely different stuff. Samian ware. Who's found some Samian ware so far? Okay, yeah, it's pretty common, right? But it's lovely stuff and it sticks out like a sore thumb. So some of the examples of Samian ware that we've got here, this is some of the finer examples that we've got from the art. And you can see really, really elaborate decoration on a lot of them. Anybody know how the decoration was made? Yes, it is what in a modern sense we would call press molding. So basically you find moulds, so this stuff is imported from France where you've got several pottery sites where produce huge quantities of this stuff. The benefit of using a press moulding technique is that you can produce massive amounts of pottery using the same mould. So it's a really, really efficient kind of early form of mass production. So the designs on here will be pressed into a bowl, the inside of a bowl, and then thrown within the bowl. You let the clay dry so it shrinks away from the inside of the bowl, and then you can lift it out and you get a nice crisp motif on there. Which I think we can all agree is pretty amazing. It's pretty beautiful. You get sort of mythological scenes on here. Sometimes you get images of Hercules, sometimes gladiators and things like that. It's really useful actually for showing to kids because they really get interested in that sort of stuff. You get a nice patterns. You get stuff like that. So that's the decorate Samian, which is really, really fancy. You get some simpler forms, you get things like this, which is a straightforward, simple cup. Again, really, really easy to just kind of throw off the clay, and you can produce, you know, sort of tens of those in an hour if you're really
Look like
good.
they're on the eye out.
And yeah, things like bowls. You know, what you get from stoneware is a really nice fine tableware. So think of this stuff as being your kind of everyday. You know, you'll use that for making your dinner day to day. This is just not your best. You get this when your parents or your parents will come around. You know. So yeah, stoneware is one of the major imports that we get. As I say, it comes from Gaul. Who knows where Gaul is? Yep, so mostly in France. There are a few sites where they're making stoneware in Britain, but they don't seem to have really taken off very much. So most of the stuff that we get is from southern and central France, particularly here. We're getting a lot of the early southern variety as well, which is really interesting because that's predominantly from central France. There's quite a lot of good stuff, yeah. Yeah. Do you recognise anything that looks like this? Anybody found anything that looks like that with the dark coating on the whiter clay? Yeah, you've got some? Right. Has anybody been able to figure out what it is yet? No? So this is what we call
Heather's keeping very quiet.
Oh, really?
You found things.
You got it, yeah?
Yeah. Remember the decorative beaker with the moulding? That's an example.
So we got a bit on there, yeah.
Okay.
So there's
That's one of those.
potentially a bit more complete example. So this is Lone Valley colour coated ware. Again, quite local. It's made on near Peterborough, just downriver. It's a really nice example of a Roman fine ware made in Britain. It's based on continental prototypes, but we in Britain really seem to have cottoned on to the way that they were making things. Does anybody know what this technique is called that they use to decorate these beakers? Anybody want to have a stab at it? Or just have a stab at how you think it might have been done, even if you don't know the name.
Let the apple
Not
strips
stamps,
to it.
sorry?
Add the apple clay to it and then shaping it.
Very almost, yeah. So the way this is done is it's effectively done by piping it on like you're icing a cake. So you get a relatively thin clay, quite a fine clay that's been processed quite nicely, and you're piping it on and just making these kind of nice trailed decorations. In modern terms we call it slip trailing. In archaeology, because we've always got to be a little bit different, we call it barbotine decoration. Make it French and it becomes more fancy.
It's much more sophisticated.
Much more sophisticated.
Icing doesn't sound good.
No, ice decoration, iceware, yeah. This one is what we call a hunt cup. Quite often what they were decorating them with was hunting scenes, so you've got a dog chasing a deer most of the time, but you also get things like vine decoration or scales, or sometimes you get even things like erotic scenes or chariot races and things like that. Some things that are a little bit more risque and we don't necessarily always get out when the kids are around.
And when we excavated the Captain Roman villa in Rutland last year, we actually had a gladiator.
Nice,
Really
yeah,
good.
yeah. That's really cool. So the early stuff in the Nene Valley ware, so your second and third century stuff, it's really, really nice. Really, really fine. It's got the nice fancy decoration on it. But when you get through to the 4th century, it all goes a bit downhill. So I don't know about you guys, but I could make something like that when I was about 6 years old. So kind of pulling things up, right? So what they're getting at here is the expansion of that industry into kind of making the sort of stuff that you're cooking with every day. So the industry changes a little bit, but generally speaking, when you guys are finding it, if you're finding these kind of really thick sherds, and if it's a little bit sort of, the slip is a little bit mottled, that's the clay coat on the top, then it's probably 4th century in date, so you're getting really late stuff if you're getting this sort of thing.
People seem to like colour codes, so they go absolutely mad and they.
That's it, just like, why not colour code everything? You're kind of taking the magic away of that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'm going to just quickly introduce you to is mortaria. So anybody know what mortaria is? No, actually no.
It's like mortar.
It's a mortar, yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's what we use stone for this nowadays, but the Romans used ceramic. So it's basically a ceramic bowl with grits of one kind or another embedded in the interior surface to make a rough surface that you can then put herbs and spices and stuff in, grind it all up and make sauces and pastes and fusions and things like that. Mortaria are really quite common, particularly in the late Roman period. This example is from the same source as this guy in the Lone Valley down near Peterborough. You can tell that because it's got these dark grits in it. So if you find anything that's got dark grits in one side and not the other, it's probably a Lone Valley mortaria down near Peterborough. It's super local, so we get lots of it. You also get things like this, which is quite a big one. It's quite obviously quite a substantial one, so you're making quite a lot of pesto in that, aren't you? with different kind of grits, and this is a kind of quartz sand grit. So if you're getting something that looks a little bit more like this, a bit more pale, then that's an Oxfordshire mortar. So that's going to be a completely different source again. So hopefully that introduces you to a bit of the variety of stuff that we're getting at this site. One of the things actually which I haven't introduced you to is the Oxfordshire ware, which you already approached me about the other day. That is because we rarely find complete examples of those or nice ones. But if anybody wants to see an example, there is one in the museum. I was hoping to get it out for this one, which I get to, unfortunately. But you'll probably get quite a lot of Oxfordshire ware. It looks like Samian, but it's not quite as nice, basically. So, have we got any questions before we kind of let you guys have another round? Yeah. So so these three here.
Yeah.
These three here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're really quite common. They're really quite common. Your Neva Valley colour coded layer is going to be coming up in basically every layer Roman context you'll get.
Yeah.
You'll get, kind of every 1 in 3 contexts will probably have a mortality shown in it, if not a little bit more than that. So it's really quite common stuff. As well as that, you get things like grey ware still coming through into the late Roman period. You still get Shelley ware in the late Roman period. And yeah, it becomes quite a diverse assemblage. Whereas early Roman groups tend to be quite sort of bland in their colours, late Roman groups will be very much more varied. And so if you're looking at a tray and you kind of see, oh, we've got lots of different colours, it might be a late Roman context. So that's a good thing to keep an eye out for as well. Anybody else? Yeah.
Is like the one that's like not very, where it's like really not very technical. Is that like related to like in the West, the sort of like falling apart or pottery?
I think it's probably a little bit of a leap to say that the fall of the Roman Empire was doing that, but I think there is also a case to say that techniques were declining a little bit because people weren't putting quite as much effort into making really nice pottery at that point. What you do get in this, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's probably partly as well because what they're doing is they're colour coding some of these festivals, which are kinds that previously had made as gravers, so they're extending out into mass producing stuff. That's more every day, and the process, the quality of it, because they're making it in a hurry, is not as good.
Yeah. So you find it huge economics. So it's not like they're taking the time to make really kind of elaborate individual parts.
Whereas the beakers are really quite difficult to make. And they're so fragile. You can imagine firing them, you're going to lose a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
Firing.
Yeah. Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah. Cool. I mean, we've got quite extensive time here.
Yeah.
What would have been made on site and what would be imported?
So, by and large, we've got very little evidence for pottery production on site, although I am aware that we've just found a kiln last night. That might change. So there is an idea that there was a kiln found on site, more or less where we are now, during the mitigation works for this site. Unfortunately, we don't know what it was making, so we can't kind of trace all that. There's definitely no. So essentially, all of it will have been imported from somewhere that wasn't Manchester. You're getting a lot of stuff that's up in the valley, so that's not coming from very far away. It's 5-10 miles sort of thing. And you're getting a lot of stuff from the Lone Valley as well, so that again is like 24 miles. By and large, that's accounting for probably 85% of what we're getting.
Right.
So, yeah.
Would it probably been similar, like the stuff that's like looking quite large?
Yeah, so it would all be, so basically what we're getting from Manchester is sort of a really big version of stuff that everybody else was using in the immediate area. There were some hints that they were consuming things slightly differently. We might be getting slightly more tablewares and drinking vessels than your average farmstead, but that's typical for a more urban site because people tend to be a little bit more, they're a bit better networked, so they're probably exposed to more influences.
Some rural sites are likely to have more big storage jars or transport vessels because often they're producing material to then trade on.
Yeah. That said, in the early period we are getting a lot of storage jars, so it seems like maybe there's kind of an early agriculture element. Which again is
those of you working on those ditches in the cemetery, those early ditches in the cemetery, there's a lot of big storage vessels coming out of that.
Yeah, there really is.
Can you tell us much about the flagon that was discovered? Have you had a chance to have a look at that?
Which one's this? Have we just had that?
The flagon from last year. It's in the display.
It's a little glass case.
Oh, the little one,
Came out
yes.
of the big pit.
Yeah. So that's so that again is probably a local flagon. It's the thing that's interesting about it is there's a piercing in the side of it, which we had on multiple of those vessels. We don't quite know exactly what that piercing was for. We know it was probably not the most straightforward thing to do, because clearly without shattering apart. But there are multiple different ideas about what they might have been used for. You know, this idea that might be on timing devices, that you know, a water clock that you pour out water and then it kind of pours at a constant rate, you can sink it and it will sink at a constant rate. Or there was a sort of ceremonial thing, you know, they were piercing apart and therefore rendering it useless before deposition. It's really difficult to say, but it's a really interesting question to think about. Yeah.
And you know, it's a tricky world of ritual.
Yeah, we are the other hour.
Yeah.
So yeah, we won't go into those murky waters. Yeah, right. Any other questions before I let you guys have a mooch around?
Yeah. Key thing to say, you know, and Adam's point out with you, yeah, it's not just about taking a look at this stuff. You know, take a look and feel about the texture, and the fabric is just as important as the form. You know, these are all things that give us really good clues about where it was made, how it was made, but also what it was made for. You know, there's a reason for making shelter with pottery as opposed to things like Samian, because they're designed for different purposes. And so, you know, one of the reasons why Adam and I have booked, I'd like to think, is because it is such a tactile process. So you're looking at fabric, looking and feeling about these pots, okay? And this is just a small selection. Yeah. There are lots of other rarer products that we see in small quantities that are coming up all the time.
Yeah. So feel free to get in and have a look. Yeah. As Jeremy says, have a feel. Obviously be careful. I feel like I shouldn't have to say that. But